Shalom, 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 Israel. This is Captain Paul Israel from Kingdom Builders of Israel, LLC. And today's class topic is going to be on Yahweh's laws are righteous and not the man-made religions. Again, Israel, today's class topic is going to be on Yahweh's laws are righteous and not the man-made religions. So Israel, get out a pen and notepad for this good lesson to discuss about Yahweh's laws being righteous and not the man-made religions. So let's get started in the book of Psalms, chapter 19, verse 7, which, of course, King David wrote the book of Psalms. And he's going to explain that Yahweh's laws are perfect, right? He's going to give the understanding that Yahweh's laws is perfect, right? Let's read Psalms chapter 19, verse 7. The law of Yahweh is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of Yahweh is sure, making wise the simple. So as you can see, Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments is perfect, right? Converting the soul. So this is how you're going to change from a sinner to now a repentant Hebrew Israelite once you recognize what laws that you are breaking from Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments of understanding from the Mosaic laws of understanding. Because many people that are in the religion base of understanding, they believe they don't have to convert over to following Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments to be repented. But according to Yahweh's word, a man must understand Yahweh's laws to convert their soul over to being righteous. That's why it says the law of Yahweh is perfect, converting the soul. So you convert your understanding to Yahweh's righteousness once you understand Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. You children of Israel, you cannot convert your soul through those religions because those religions are man-made. And Yahweh and Yahshua don't deal with man-made religions. This is why this is in here. And this came out of King David's mouth of understanding once the Spirit was put upon King David to prophesy this understanding. So the children of Israel, through different generations, can understand that you need Yahweh's laws, statutes, and commandments so you can change to be in the good eyesight of Him. Okay? So you can change to be in the good eyesight of His Son, Yahshua the Mashiach, the Black Messiah, as well. As you can see, the understanding. The testimony of Yahweh is sure, making wise the simple. So now once you was once ignorant in the world, following worldly theology, worldly sin, once now when you understand Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments, now you become wise now. You're no longer simple, meaning you're no longer stupid, right? You're no longer ignorant once you understand Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. That's what the book of Psalms chapter 19 verse 7 is getting into. That's why it's important, you Hebrew Israelites, that you must know what Yahweh's commandments is basically going over. Okay, because you cannot walk this life without knowing the laws of the Most High. Because if you're walking in this life without knowing the laws of the Most High, you're walking in full-blown sin at that particular point. So this is why it's important, you Hebrew Israelites, to repent daily and also do your research on this Hebrew truth and study Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. As you can see. So let's go to the next verse. It says Psalms chapter 19 verse 8. It says, the statutes of Yahweh are right, rejoice in the heart. The commandment of Yahweh is pure, enlightening the eyes. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this, Israel? So it says it again, 2 different times, that Yahweh's laws is right. It's perfect, right? It says the statutes of Yahweh are right, because there's no flaw in Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. It says the statutes of Yahweh are right. Rejoice in the heart, because now once you understand Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments, you children of Israel, you're supposed to be rejoicing that you are living a godly lifestyle. Whether you are a man, woman, or child. Once you recognize what Yahweh's laws is getting into, now you understand, hey, this is how you live right. This is how you walk in the good eyesight of the Most High Yah. By walking in his law, statutes, and commandments. The commandment of Yahweh is pure. So that means Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments is pure, right? There's nothing wrong with Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. Also says this, enlightening the eyes. So meaning it's supposed to give a man, woman, or child an understanding of what righteousness is. That's what it's getting into, enlightening the eyes. So Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments are supposed to make an individual's mindset crystal clear on how they're supposed to walk in their everyday life. Because you see things with your eyes. So once you know Yahweh's laws, now you know how to conduct yourself with having a sense of morality about yourself, you children of Israel. But because many people don't walk in Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments, they are walking in what? Darkness, right? So those man-made religions, you're walking in darkness if you're a part of those man-made religions, because those man-made religions don't get into Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments to this fulfillment, right? Some of those religions may take some branches from the commandments to a certain degree, but it doesn't go all the way through in detail on Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments, because those man-made religions are just basically philosophy of man. So those religions have somewhat of appearance of being righteous, but in fact it is not righteous, because Yahweh and Yahshua did not give man religion. Okay? Yahweh and Yahshua gave man, when we say man, we're talking about those Hebrew Israelites. Yahweh and Yahshua gave those Hebrew Israelites, whether a man, woman, or child, they gave those individuals law, statutes, and commandments. So Yahweh gave over those religions to those Gentile nations to follow. Okay? But the Most High Yah overall gave those laws, statutes, and commandments to the children of Israel. So the children of Israel eyes can be crystal clear. So the children of Israel can have an enlightening of their own eyes to have the understanding of Yahweh's commandments. Because it says again, Psalms chapter 19 verse 8, the statutes of Yahweh are right. Rejoice in the heart. The commandment of Yahweh is pure, enlightening the eyes, as you can see. Psalms chapter 19 verse 9, the next verse. It says this. Psalms chapter 19 verse 9. The fear of Yahweh is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of Yahweh are true and righteous altogether. Whoa, wait a minute. You see this? So again, this is contrary to what the Christian world or those other religions are talking about. It says this, the fear of Yahweh is clean, enduring forever. So Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments is going to be here on earth forever. There's no ending of Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. Because when you go to the Christian faith religion, they say Christ done away with the law. Christ didn't push Yahweh's commandments, which is a lie. So Christ promoted Yahweh's commandments. Because the word, according to the Old Testament of understanding spoken by King David and also the other prophets, it says this, the fear of Yahweh is clean, enduring forever. So Yahshua the Mashiach is the word. right? He's the word. He cannot contradict the word. So again, Yahshua promoted Yahweh's commandments because the word says it endures forever. Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments endures forever. Point blank, period. The judgments of Yahweh are true and righteous altogether. So the judgments behind an individual breaking Yahweh's commandments, guess what? Yahweh is going to judge righteously on those individuals that's breaking his commandments willfully. And it says, and righteous altogether. So the judgments or the penalties or the actual reward by keeping Yahweh's commandments is altogether righteous. Okay? So Yahweh is a righteous judge. That's why this is in here. So King David is letting it be known that Yahweh's righteous judgments on individuals breaking his commandments, and also on those individuals being rewarded based upon them keeping the commandments, it's all righteous of understanding based upon Yahweh's blueprint on his law, statutes, and commandments. As you can see, there's understanding. So now we're going to get the understanding where it says the fear of Yahweh is clean, enduring forever. We're going to explain that this is really getting into keeping Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. This is why it's saying enduring forever. When it says the fear of Yahweh is clean, we're going to explain that where it says the fear of Yahweh is clean, it's talking about keeping Yahweh's commandments, which is going to be basically explaining that Yahweh's commandments endure forever. When we go to the book of Psalms, chapter 111, verse 10, it's going to explain what the fear of the Most High is getting into. Psalms chapter 111, verse 10. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endure forever. So you see this, Israel? So this is why it's imperative that you have to read precept upon precept to get crystal clear of understanding what certain verses is really getting into. It says the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. Because once you fear the Most High by what? Hearkening to his commandments, you become wise, right? Because now you have understanding of his law, statutes, and commandments to live in a better situation, meaning to have a good morality about yourself. Because now you have structure, you have discipline, you have order of understanding how to run your household, how to run your life based upon a blueprint of Yahweh's commandments. That's why it says the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endure forever. So Yahweh's commandments endure forever. Point blank, period. So basically, to have understanding of this Bible, you must keep the commandments. Because these people in these religion world don't have the understanding of Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments like that. Right? So they are not wise people. That's why they make certain mistakes in life. And then they pay the penalty by being what? Judged. Whether they judge in their courtroom, whether they being judged, basically getting put to death, or whether they judge getting plagued with certain illnesses. Okay, or they've been plagued with certain problems in their life, all because they did not want to keep Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. That's the understanding. And it says this again, a good understanding have all they that do his commandments. So the individuals that understand this Bible in the right understanding are those that are applying Yahweh's commandments throughout their day-by-day life. So the ones that are not applying Yahweh's commandments, they're not going to be able to break this Bible down. Breaking this Bible down for an individual that is not applying Yahweh's commandments is going to be very difficult. So the only way you're going to be able to break this Bible down, you must keep Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. Because many people believe that they can break this Bible down through those religions And of course, through those religions, people don't keep Yahweh's commandments in its right understanding. Okay, so that's why you will see the error of the ways of the people that are involved in those religion institutions. Okay. As you can see, this understanding. So now we're going to go into the understanding that Yahshua the Mashiach, the Black Messiah, when he was having a discussion with his people in Israel, who were those Hebrew Israelites, whether they was the disciples or whether they was the multitude that followed him, right? He's having an understanding with these individuals and explaining to them that hey, he did not come to destroy Yahweh's commandments, right? This is the understanding when we read the book of Matthew chapter 5 verse 17, that Yahshua the Mashiach is proving that he's not trying to do away with Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments, because we read earlier that Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments endure forever. So we go to the book of Matthew chapter 5 verse 17, which is in the New Testament, and Matthew was a disciple of Yahshua the Mashiach, okay, the Black Messiah. So when we read this understanding, it says this in Matthew chapter 5 verse 17, think not that I come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. So Christ is explaining that he did not come to destroy on what the prophets taught. Christ is also explaining that he did not come to destroy the laws of the Most High. Okay? Christ is going to specify in other precepts on what he came to do and to fulfill. But as you can see, Christian churches, they stop at this one particular verse and believe that, hey, he came to fulfill the law, so we don't have to keep it no more. And they close the book, right? No. We're going to explain this understanding, what Christ is explaining in this understanding. And of course, this is Christ speaking because it is red letters in the book of Matthew chapter 5 verse 17. So we're going to see what Yahshua the Mashiach is explaining when he said, but to fulfill. Because we have Christian churches telling people, see, he fulfilled the law, that we don't have to keep the laws no more. No. That's not what this verse is saying. So we're going to read a continuation of understanding to specify what Yahshua the Mashiach was explaining when we go to the book of Luke chapter 24 verse 44 to specify what Yahshua the Mashiach came to fulfill on. So we're going to continue the understanding. Luke chapter 24 verse 44. And of course, Luke was one of the disciples of Yahshua the Mashiach, the Black Messiah, but he was not a part of the 12 disciples, okay? But he was a part of the discipleship that this individual named Luke followed Yahshua the Mashiach as well. But he was not a part of the main 12, okay? So we go to the book of Luke chapter 24 verse 44. And it says this. And of course, again, this is Yahshua the Mashiach talking in this conversation. And he said unto them, these are the words which I spake unto you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which were written in the law of Moses, and in the prophets, and in the Psalms concerning me. So again, Christ is explaining that the things that was written from the Old Testament was written on the things that Yahshua the Mashiach must fulfill in the New Testament of understanding when you get into that gospel of understanding. Okay, so this is the understanding. But nowhere in the Old Testament spoken by those prophets did they say Yahshua the Mashiach came to do away with Yahweh's commandments. Okay, and this is why those Christian churches, right, don't want their members to really read the Old Testament, Because once the members read the Old Testament, now they're going to get the understanding what Yahshua the Mashiach purpose coming to the earth was about. Okay, Yahshua the Mashiach purpose on coming to the earth in Israel was to restore the house of Israel, to come back to righteousness, to be granted salvation based upon Yahshua the Mashiach down on the cross for Israel. So they now can be a part of that covenant agreement that was going to be established under that new covenant agreement in the future of understanding when Yahshua the Mashiach kingdom was going to be established on earth. That's the understanding. Yahshua the Mashiach came to promote Yahweh's commandments in the right spirit, so the children of Israel can follow that same blueprint so they can inherit the land of Israel in the future. Versus just going by the Mosaic law and then still falling short based upon not trying to have that right spirit in mind to mimic the pattern of Yahweh's son, the black Messiah. So that's why we must mimic the pattern of Yahweh's son, the black Messiah, who is Yahshua the Mashiach, because this is the only way we're going to inherit that kingdom to come that's going to be established on earth during Yahshua the Mashiach's reign on earth as the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. That's the understanding. But Yahshua the Mashiach came to fulfill what was written of him to do from the Old Testament. Okay? Now we get the understanding what Yahshua the Mashiach was explaining, where it says, "Think not that I come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill." Now we know what it's explaining where it says, "but to fulfill." He was explaining that he was coming to fulfill what was written of him to do from the Old Testament prophets. Okay, when we got the understanding in the book of Luke chapter 24 verse 44. As you can see, this is why it's imperative to read precept upon precept, line upon line, to get the clear understanding. Because the religion world takes verses out of context to manipulate so people can still be in sin. Okay? So as you can see on this platform, on Kingdom Builders of Israel LLC, we're going to explain these verses crystal clear so we can all understand what's going on here. So now we know that Yahshua the Mashiach did not come to destroy the laws of God. He came to promote Yahweh's commandments based upon what was written of him to do from the Old Testament prophets. John chapter 5 verse 30 is going to give the understanding that Yahshua the Mashiach is going to establish that he has to go off the blueprint of what was written of him to do from the Old Testament prophets of understanding. Also, too, Yahshua is explaining that he's not coming to the earth to do his own thing. He's coming to establish what was written of him to do from the prophets. John chapter 5 verse 30. And again, John was another disciple of Yahshua the Mashiach, the black Messiah. John chapter 5 verse 30. And also this right here is red letters. So this is Yahshua the Mashiach, the black Messiah, talking. "I can of my own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge. And my judgment is just, because I seek not my own will, but the will of the Father, which hath sent me." So you see this, Israel? Christ is explaining to the multitude, or also to his disciples, that he cannot do nothing based upon his own doing. He has to do the things based upon what the will of the Father has sent him to the earth to do, or was written of him to do by those prophets. So this is the establishment that mankind need to understand on earth, that Yahshua the Mashiach was operating in the right spirit of his Father to do the job on what his Father told him to do. And also, too, this is a cut to that Trinity doctrine as saying that God the Father came as Christ on earth. That's a lie. As you can see, Yahshua the Mashiach is explaining that the Father sent him to the earth to do his will. So Yahweh and Yahshua are not the same person. And this is red letters, by the way. So Yahweh and Yahshua the Mashiach, the black Messiah, they are both not the author of confusion. But these man-made religions are confusing people. These man-made religions is a centerpiece for confusion. This is why we must follow this Bible as it is written. So let's read this again. John chapter 5 verse 30. I can of my own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not my own will, but the will of the Father which hath sent me. So Yahshua Mashiach desire in the understanding to seek and desire to do what? The will of the Father. Yahshua Mashiach is going to follow the blueprint or what's spoken of him to do based upon the prophets of old. And also Yahshua is going to judge based upon what? The laws of the Most High. He's going to judge the individual based upon the laws of the Most High. Okay? Because Yahshua is a righteous judge. Just like his Father is a righteous judge, who is Yahweh. So now we got the understanding that Yahshua Mashiach, the Black Messiah, did not come to the earth to change anything. He's making it crystal clear. He did not come to the earth to change Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. So you religion world, y'all need to stop lying on this Bible. You Christian pastors, you need to stop lying on this Bible. Because Yahshua Mashiach is explaining crystal clear. I can of my own self do nothing. So Yahshua did not come to the earth to destroy Yahweh's laws. Yahshua Mashiach did not come to the earth to remove Yahweh's laws, statutes, and commandments to form a religion. Yahshua Mashiach came to the earth to establish what was written of him to do by the holy prophets. Point blank, period. John chapter 5 verse 31. So Yahshua Mashiach is basically, in this understanding, going to repeat himself again in the understanding that, guess what? He's going to have to do what? On the things that was written of him to do. He had to go by the understanding on what the witnesses was explaining on what he was sent here to the earth to do. Let's read John chapter 5 verse 31. If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. So you see this, Israel? So Yahshua is establishing that, hey, if I'm doing my own thing and not based upon the blueprint of the prophets, then that means my witness is not true. That means Yahshua Mashiach is not walking in truth then. Because in the religion world, primarily the Christian faith, they're forming a different doctrine than what Christ really was about. Because the Christians, they'll say Christ came for all nations, all nationalities, and stuff like that. He was teaching the gospel all throughout the earth, and all this other stuff. No. Christ, understanding his ministry was only in Israel. Then he told those disciples to go out to those different areas where the rest of the Hebrew Israelites was at. To spread the gospel to those scattered Hebrew Israelites who were a part of those 12 tribes that were scattered abroad. That's the gospel. But as you can see in his understanding, Christ is letting it be known that he had to go off the blueprint of what the prophets spoke about him, on what he was come to the earth to do. And Yahshua Mashiach is explaining that he's not in control based upon doing his own will. Yahshua Mashiach has orders to follow, just like the Hebrew Israelites have orders to follow, just like the holy angels have orders to follow by Yahweh himself. Okay? Yahweh is the one that's directing the whole deal. Yahweh is the boss of all bosses. Yahweh is above Christ. Yahweh is above the children of Israel. Yahweh is above the holy angels. Yahweh is in control of everything. As you can see, this understanding. As you can see, Yahshua Mashiach is explaining that he's not the same person as Yahweh. Because he just said, if I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. So if Yahshua is following orders, that means he's not Yahweh. As you can see. So Yahweh and Yahshua are two separate persons. As you can see, this understanding. So this is another cut to the Trinity doctrine. So the Trinity doctrine is a lie. So Yahshua Mashiach is letting it be known that he had to go off the order of the prophets from the old.